Yes, you can build your own gaming PC and save yourself hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. Let's show you how. Hey, stop the intro. Let's just get into it. All right, so the first thing you're going to do is grab your motherboard, sit it on top of the box, and then you're going to open the clip that holds the processor in place. You just pull it back and you lift it up and that opens the socket. Then you're going to take your processor, you're going to make sure that it's lined up properly. You can see there's a little gold arrow here that lines up with the gold arrow on the motherboard, or it's not gold on the motherboard, but it is a triangle. Then no pressure, don't put any pressure on this whatsoever. You just sit it down and it'll fall into its spot. Now, once it's in, you can just take your finger and just move it just a little bit just to make sure that it's in its space. If it doesn't move, it is. Then you take your clip and you just push it right back down. Now your processor slotted in place. Next thing that we're gonna do here is we're gonna install the SSD. Now, a lot of newer motherboards have a little clip to make this a little bit easier. This is an older motherboard, or a cheaper motherboard, so it doesn't have that. But you just take your SSD, you find your SSD slot, and you'll hear it snap into place. It only goes one way. There it is. Now this screw on this is extremely tiny, so I have a little magnetic screwdriver to hold it. Just push it down, be very careful, you don't want to drop it. Line it up and then just give it a couple of twists. There you go, now that's in, easy as that. Now the next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna get our RAM installed. Here I've got 2 sticks of 16 gig RAM. This is DDR4 3200. Now the RAM will only go one way. Most motherboards, check the manual, but for the most part, all motherboards are going to use, if you're only using 2 sticks, it's going to be slots 2 and slots 4. So you're going to open these little clips. Some of them open on both sides, some open, in this case, it only opens on one. But you'll look and you'll see a little opening in the RAM, and there's also, it corresponds to a little notch inside the RAM slots on the motherboard. So to put this in, you have to put a decent amount of pressure. So you just want to make sure that it's lined up properly before you do that, because if you press it hard and it's the wrong way, you're going to break it. Don't be afraid. It'll only go in one way. Just look at it and line it up, make sure it's the right way. So it's like this, and then there's little slots. You just put it in the slots, get it to slide down like so, and then equal pressure on the front and the back, and you'll hear it snap into place. There's that one. Now do the same thing with the other one. Get it in the slot, get it into the slot. Get all the way down, same thing. Equal pressure on the front and the back. Snaps into place. All right, now we're gonna go ahead and install the fan for the processor. On these Ryzen motherboards, you have these little black plastic clips that are holding the plate on the back of the motherboard. So you're just gonna take these out. There's one, and do the same thing with the other one. And then once you get these out, you'll see the screw holes that line up for the fan. Now, this processor came with the fan, and the fan had pre-applied thermal paste on it. You can use that, it'll be fine. Just I prefer to put on my own thermal paste, but you can feel free if you want to use a thermal paste that came on and go right ahead. So this is a square processor. The newer Intel ones are kind of elongated, so the method is a little bit different. But for the square ones, what I do is I just go with I just put a little X in the middle. There we go. And now the fan just sits down right on top, and the screws line up with the screw holes. There's actually a plate on the bottom of this board. That's why it's sitting on this box, so it doesn't fall out. Because now that we took the screws off, there's nothing holding it in. If I lifted this up, the plate would fall, so we're just leaving it sit there. Make sure that your fan is lined up the right way. In this case, the AMD is on this side. And then you just line it up with the screw holes that are already there. There we go. And you screw it in. Now I like to go in an X shape. You know, I start in one corner. I don't go all the way tight. Then I skip to the next corner. Again, I don't go all the way down. I just get them to where they hold. Oh, that one popped off. Now this one. Now, since this is the last one, I'll go ahead and tighten it all the way down, but then I tighten in the next pattern as well. And this just puts even pressure down so the thermal paste that's spreading underneath of it spreads evenly. You don't want it to go too tight, but you're not gonna break it either. You don't want it to come off, so get it pretty good, just don't over tighten it. All right, now the fan is installed. And here, this is the cable that attaches to the CPU header on your motherboard. On this particular motherboard, that is this one right up here. This is a 4-pin, and it will only go in one way. You just line it up, slide it on down. There you go. Now, I like to keep things, you know, as neat as I can, so I just kind of tuck this cable out of the way, get it down so that it's not sticking up inside and you can see it inside the case. Personal preference, you don't have to do that, just makes it cleaner. Okay, so our motherboard is done. It's time to get the motherboard into the case. All right, so now we're ready to get the motherboard installed into the case. This motherboard does not have an integrated I/O shield, so it comes with a little I/O shield in the box. I already went ahead and put it in. You just make sure that it's orientated the right way, and then you just snap it in. It's very, very easy. It wasn't even worth recording to get that put in. Then you're gonna take your motherboard. You're gonna make sure that all of the I/O ports are lined up with the I/O shield, and there's also what's called standoffs inside the bottom of this case. And the standoffs are where there's little holes in the board for the screws to go in to secure it down. So you just take the motherboard, you make sure that, again, that it's lined up with the I/O ports. There you go. Easy as that. All right, we're all lined up here. Now we're just gonna go ahead and get it all screwed in. Okay, so now we've got the motherboard screwed into the chassis. It's secured, it's not moving anywhere. The next thing that I like to do is to go ahead and route the cables, both the cables that come from the case and as well as the cables that are coming from the power supply. Get them in and get the cables all routed where they need to go so that we can connect them. The last thing that I do is plug the graphics card in. I don't want to take any chances of messing up the graphics card while I'm running cables somewhere else. Plus, with the graphics card in there, it's harder to get to everything. So we're gonna go ahead and put the power supply in, and then we're gonna run all the cables where they need to go, and we're gonna get them all connected. Okay, so the first thing that I like to do when I'm putting the power supply in is I just get all of the cables that come with the case. This is for the LED control, the USB hub, the power button, so on and so forth. I just take all of these cables and I just loop them over the top to get them out of the way so they don't get tangled up with the power supply as I'm putting it in now. To put the power supply in, the fan will go on the bottom because there's an intake down here to bring some air in for the power supply. So you take the power supply, get all the cables out of the way. Very easy. It just slides in like that, and then you will see holes here, and there are holes in the power supply, and you just line up the holes and you put the included screws in to the holes that go into the power, through the case into the power supply. Now it's kind of hard for me to see it from this direction. Try my best here. Where is the hole? There it is. Again, and I don't go all the way in case it needs to be adjusted to line up some of the other holes. I just get all the screws started, and then once they're all, started, then I'll go ahead and tighten them all down. One more here. All right, with this being the last one, I'll go ahead and tighten it. Easy as that. All right, power supply is in. Now, like I said, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna run the cables where they need to go. Now, this is a regular power supply. This is not partially modular, obviously not fully modular. So all of the cables that it has, they're all in there. You can't take them out. If you get a modular power supply, you can take out the ones you don't need. That's just costs more money. So the first thing that I do is I pull out all the cables that we're gonna need. We're gonna need the 24 pin. We're gonna need the PCIe for the graphics card. We will need one of these SATA power plugs because this particular case came with 3 ARGB fans, which saves some money. But the hub that's inside of it needs power, and it runs off SATA power, so we're gonna need that. And the last one we're gonna need is the 8-pin CPU power. So I pull these all off to the side, and then I take the extra cables that we're not gonna need, and I try to, wrap them up as neatly as I can and get them in the case out of the way somewhere where you're not gonna see them. In this case, there's a hard drive cage, which we're not gonna use, so I'll just fold these up and then stick them up under that cage. Not only will the cage hold them so they're not moving around and in the way, but it'll also hide them, so you won't see them from the front through the glass side panel. Okay, so the SATA power is gonna plug in the back, so we're just gonna leave it here off to the side. The 24 pin goes to the side of the motherboard on this side. So we're gonna run it up here. We're gonna shove it through there and get it ready for where it needs to go. The CPU power, the 8 pin, is gonna plug in the top up here in the top corner. So we're going to run that where it needs to go, if it'll stay. Cable's barely long enough. And then lastly, from the power supply that we need to run is we have the PCIe power for the graphics card. So I'm going to shove that up in through here, just making sure that I don't hit any of the pins on the motherboard. And just pull this through and get it out of the way so it's ready to go. And again, we still have the SATA power this is going to plug in to one of these cables back here. Okay, so now we have this jumble of cables here. Now, 3 of them are for the RGB fans that come in the case, and they are already connected to the built-in hub that came with the case. So you just gotta be careful that you don't pull them and get them, pull them out of place. That would stay. There we go. We also have an ARGB plug from the hub. So in this case, you can control the RGB with a LED button on the case, or you can plug it into an ARGB hub on your motherboard and control it through your motherboard's RGB control. So we're gonna connect that. I'm just trying to get these cables organized so I know what needs to go where and what we need to get through to the front. Okay, so here we go. This is what's left. All right, so this is the SATA power for the that we're going to plug into this power, the SATA power cable here. We have a USB 2 plug that plugs into a USB 2 header. We have the HD audio that will plug into the audio header. And then we also have these bunch of little tiny plugs. This is for the front panel. This is for your power, for the power button to turn on the computer and things like that. So we're just gonna route these in the best place through the case to the closest place where they're gonna go on the motherboard so that we don't have to have the cable stretching out to the side. We also need to get our ARGB cable ran, and this is the USB 3 header. And it's going to go right next to the 24 pin, right over here. So we're gonna run that through. Which one is this? This is the USB header. Okay, so the USB header is right here. So we're gonna, again, we don't wanna run it like, for instance, over here and then stretch it all the way across. We're gonna run it in the closest possible place, which is going to be right here, so that we can just plug it in and then get the excess out there. This is the power, the front panel connectors, which is down here in this corner. So we're just gonna run these right through this hole right there. And lastly, we have our HD audio header. And the HD audio connects all the way over here in this corner. So for this, we're gonna run over here, pull it through that way. All right, I've got we got one more. We got the ARGB header. And in this case, the ARGB header is right down here, right next to the HD audio. So we're gonna run it in the same place that we ran the HD audio. This cable's a little bit short, so we just gotta be careful that we don't pull it too hard and break it. Okay, so I moved to a different spot where I can get a better camera angle and better lighting to show these connections. This first one is a 24 pin connector. It goes here on the side of the motherboard. There's a clip on the top, and it'll only go in one way. So you'll just line that up, push it in. This is the USB 3 cable going into the USB 3 header. Again, it'll only go one way. Up top here, we have the 8-pin power connector for the motherboard. Again, it'll only go one way. There's a tab on the top, so you'll just line it up and then, snap it in place. As you can see, all of these plugs, they only go in one way. This is the HD audio. Again, you can see there's one pin missing, so you'll line it up with the plug, snap it in. Same thing with the addressable RGB header. There's one plug that's missing, so you'll just look at it and plug it in the proper spot. Here's 2 USB headers. I'm choosing the one on the left, just so that I don't have to stretch the cable all the way to the other side of the case. This is the front panel connectors here. It's kind of hard to see, and there's a bunch of little cables. Just look at the manual, find out which one goes where, and then plug them in accordingly. And this is getting ready for the opening, or making the opening for the GPU. You need to put the GPU in the case to find out exactly which of these holes you need to open. Some cases, they have a screw and you can unscrew these plates and they'll come off. On this case, you just have to bend, choose the right openings and then bend it back and forth like I'm doing here. And then eventually it will just fall off, and you'll be left with the 2 openings that you'll need for your GPU. Again, you just need to sit the GPU inside the case and find out and look and see which 2 you need to open up for your particular card. Okay, so we've got all of our cables run. They're all connected to the motherboard in their proper locations. We've got the back panel back in place. Now, the last step is to get the graphics card installed. And again, I saved this till the end because you don't want to fill up the interior of the case where it makes it harder to move. There's a lot of little cables, a lot of little tiny plugs you got to plug in. But also, I don't want to take any chances of damaging it. It's the most important part of the computer. It's the most expensive part of the computer, or it should be, if you've spent your money properly. So now it's just get the graphics card installed, and you can see that we've got our graphics card power supply right there. Let's flip this over here like such. Now there is a little tab inside the graphics card on the PCIe slot. You're going to make sure that that's open. And then you're going to take your graphics card. It will only go one way. Obviously the I/O goes to the back, and you got to make sure that you have the proper slots open on the back. You're going to line up the pins with the motherboard, basically the same way that we did the RAM, same concept. There's an opening that fits in. And it doesn't take very much pressure, but you just get it lined up, make sure that it's in the right spot. You don't want to force it down in the wrong spot. Once you feel like it's lined up, you're going to push and you'll hear a snap. There we go. Lined up there. And then now we got to get the two little screws and secure them on the side over here so that the graphics card isn't flexing. So let me grab those screws. Again, not all the way, because there's another hole that we have to hit, and we don't want to cover it up. There we go. Now we can go ahead and tighten them down all the way. All right. In this particular case, it has this little shield that goes in, and it covers up the slots. So we're going to put that back in like that, and then it's just a little thumb screw. Screws in here. And there we go. And now the last thing is we're going to go ahead and plug in the graphics card, the power supply to the graphics card. It will only go one way. There's a little tab, a little clip. It's always on the top. It's going to take it, make sure that it's lined up, give it a I'm actually going to use this one for aesthetic purposes. I don't want to have this hanging like this and then have two cables. I'd rather just have the one cable. You can use either. So make sure it's lined up properly. You'll hear a little bit of a snap. There it is. There we go.
Okay, so let's real quick go over the pricing. I priced all of these parts out on different websites, Amazon, Newegg, B&H Photo, so on and so forth, and Amazon ended up being the cheapest all the way across the board. So the motherboard cost me $81.50. The processor cost me $77.78. I was able to get the GPU and PSU brand new off of eBay for $185.50, which was a deal. Now, I didn't use this RAM because I built this computer for someone and they wanted RGB RAM. But if I were going to use the RAM, it would have cost $54.97. But instead, the RAM in the video was this one, and it cost $65.99. And for the SSD, I went with, it cost me $60.99. The case was $59.99, but it had a 10% off coupon, so that brought it down to $53.99 for a total cost of $514.73 plus tax. Of course, your taxes vary based on your region.
That's it, guys. Everything's plugged in, everything's connected. Next thing we got to do is just turn it on. Let's give it a shot. Easy as that. It's easy as that. Do yourself a favor. Don't buy pre-builts. Buy your own pieces. Save yourself hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. Thanks for watching.